WFYI podcast brought to you by Bloomington, Indiana, an American college town offering food and drink, college sports, outdoor activities, live music, cool art, and good times daily. Everyone is welcome in Bloomington. More information at visitbloomington.com.
This is WFYI News Now. It's April 19th, and I'm Abriana Herron. On today's show, a new report shows racial and ethnic disparities persist in healthcare. Ivy Tech offers free classes for high schoolers this summer. And a conversation on gun violence and a youth-led group working to change the narrative around the issue.
You know, gun violence has had such a devastating impact on my generation, on young people, and our realities are just in so many different ways surrounded by this cycle of gun violence.
Those stories coming up. But first, Spark on the Circle, a program that closes parts of Monument Circle to vehicles, opening it to foot traffic for arts and culture events, is set to return to downtown Indianapolis in June. Ben Thorpe has more.
The program launched in 2023 and welcomed some 78,000 visitors, according to data from Downtown Indy Inc. In a statement, DII President and CEO Taylor Schaefer said the demand for unique programming in the downtown area has never been greater. Other events on the Circle include the incorporation of the Farmers Market, which will relocate during renovations to the Indianapolis City Market. Last year, critics of Spark on the Circle included some downtown business owners and then mayoral candidate Jefferson Shreve. The conversation about permanently closing the Circle to traffic is ongoing. Spark will offer programming from June until November. I'm Ben Thorpe.
A new report released Thursday shows racial and ethnic disparities persist in healthcare access, quality, and outcomes across the nation, including in Indiana. Side Effects Public Media's Elizabeth Gabriel reports.
The report is from the Commonwealth Fund, a private foundation which supports independent research on healthcare issues and highlights continued inequities. David Radley is a senior scientist with the Commonwealth Fund. He says health disparities are related to a variety of factors like a lack of affordable, quality health care options and health insurance.
Not only do uninsured rates vary from state to state, but we also find big differences within states where we see large coverage gaps between people from different racial and ethnic groups.
In Indiana, 21% of Hispanic adults are uninsured, compared to 12% of uninsured Black adults and 8% of white, Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander adults. Elizabeth Gabriel, Side Effects Public Media.
Ivy Tech Community College will offer free classes for Indiana high schoolers this summer. From WFYI's Education Desk, Dylan Pierce-McCoy reports students can earn credit toward a college degree.
More than 4,000 high schoolers enrolled in free Ivy Tech classes last summer, and the program is back this year. It's open to all high schoolers in the state. That includes students who graduate this spring, 8th graders who'll enter high school in the fall, homeschoolers, and students at adult high schools. Tuition and textbooks are both free. Many Indiana students already earn college credits from Ivy Tech during the school year by taking dual credit classes taught at their high schools. Ivy Tech officials touted the free summer classes as part of the institution's commitment to helping high school students earn college credit and certificates. I'm Dylan Pierce-McCoy.
Students can enroll in the program at ivytech.edu/free courses. And for our final story today, as more youth in central Indiana are becoming victims of gun violence, one group hopes to change the narrative on youth gun violence across the nation. I recently sat down with Paige Carter, an Indiana student and youth council member for the group Project Unloaded.
Why did you become a youth council member for Project Unloaded, and what is Project Unloaded's mission?
Yeah, so Project Unloaded is a gun violence prevention organization that works to save lives by changing America's deadly gun culture. So a lot of people believe this myth that guns can make them safer. And this myth is, driving up gun sales and in turn gun deaths. So I personally first joined Project Unloaded, not only because Project Unloaded is working to end gun violence, and that's something that means a lot to me, But I also really loved that Project Unloaded was recognizing and believing in the power of young people to create this change. You know, gun violence has had such a devastating impact on my generation, on young people, and our realities are just in so many different ways surrounded by this cycle of gun violence. We go to schools and, you know, we think about the what ifs. We hear about shootings at malls and movie theaters, and it's just, our lives are just constantly surrounded by this cycle of violence. And despite the fact that we are so impacted by gun violence, we are almost always left out of conversations about how to tackle this issue.
And so the Safer Not Using Guns, or the SNUG campaign, it brings discourse about gun usage to teens on various social media platforms such as Instagram and TikTok. How can something like changing the narrative on those platforms help reduce gun violence among youth here in Indiana?
You know, it's no secret that Indiana is a red state, and with that comes a lot of people who feel very strongly about the idea of gun ownership, and a lot of people who might raise their kids around guns and instill those same beliefs in their kids. I think we have seen the side effects of this culture with, you know, the number of gun violence incidents and gun deaths across the state. But despite this prevalence of gun culture in Indiana, I still believe that Indiana teens are willing to listen to Project Unloaded's messages, and they're open to this idea that guns make us less safe. And so I think, you know, the SNUG campaign is specifically focusing on connecting with teens who haven't made up their minds about guns, gun violence, gun ownership, and they're interested in learning the facts behind gun ownership.
And recently, like 7 youth members, ages 12 to 16, they were injured due to gun violence in downtown Indianapolis. As a young person, why is being a part of an organization like Project Unloaded so important?
It's so frustrating and heartbreaking and traumatic to hear about things that are happening to people my age in my state. And, you know, every week it's something else. Every week there's another incident. Every week there's more gun deaths. And I think that young people are just so specifically tired of this. We don't want this to be our reality because we know that we have the power to change this reality. When I hear about incidents like this, it's just so saddening, but it also empowers me to want to work harder at this, and it empowers me to want to talk to my peers about this and get those conversations started. And I think that that's something that a lot of people are doing across the state when we hear about things like this.
Earlier, you talked about Gen Z in general is not a part of these conversations. If you could speak to a local politician about youth gun violence, what would you say to them?
You can have policy changes, but I think that when you have this push from, you know, society, from people on the ground who are like, enough is enough, like, I think that's where, you know, we're going to see the quickest change.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Paige.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
That's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by the following people who live in your community: Drew Daudelin, Kendall Antron, who composed the music for this podcast, and me, Abriana Herron. Our news director is Sarah Neal-Estes. If you like today's episode, remember to subscribe and share, and follow WFYI on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening. We'll be back on Monday.